Yeah,
Um,
maybe just to re-highlight the point that we made a little bit in here, but I separate it out and make it into a key term at the end of the chapter, and I title it the ethical problem of the East. And
that's right. Yes. Yeah.
it's this idea of um, a spiritual point of view that devalues suffering, and that's sort of the whole last part of the chapter is talking about the problem of suffering and how if we take a point of view that just completely dismisses suffering and doesn't treat it fairly, essentially, then that approach is essentially worth dismissing on its face, and most people will. So I create this definition of the ethical problem of the East because that tends to come from Eastern spirituality. So I say the spiritually based attitude that is overly dismissive of suffering, the body, and the significance of earthly life based on the identification of the individual with the infinite or God. So the more that you push that divine connection to be uh, a all-encompassing and fully saturating identity where you just say, "Oh, your identity is the infinite," and a lot of Alan Watts stuff goes to this, and a lot of people influenced by modern interpretations of Eastern philosophy have this dismissal of the world, whether as illusion or just not worth worrying about, whatever it is. These bring up immense ethical problems, and I think they ignore the reality that we do have purpose in this world. We can clearly see that we are made with purpose. This world is made with purpose. We are here for a purpose, and that's the case that the book is making. So while I think that the Eastern religions and philosophies have some valid insights and some good ways of illustrating things, um, we do have to be on guard about going too far down that road and not taking the middle way, ironically, um, to what I think the Christian point of view gets right of hinting at a divine unity and to some extent consumption of ourselves, but also talking about that as continued communion and ourselves as continued embodied beings. So I just think that's worth noting that is said in there, and that's part of the trajectory of the book from here out to keep that in mind and to not stray too far in that direction.
Did want to bring up the ethical problem of the East. I did want to bring that up at the end. I'm glad you did. Um, because then that does directly tie into the following chapter, the myth of the meaning of meaninglessness. If the ethical problem of the East is to assume that all life is illusory and
Right.
therefore meaningless.
Yeah. The myth of meaningless is um like a mirror of that problem. Like the Eastern problem is a hyper spiritualization,
Mhm.
and I think the same Eric Neumann, who I read the quote from earlier, he calls it the being consumed by the spiritual father, something like that. It's a inflationary but also degrading experience of going into full all spirituality and rejecting materiality. But then you have the flip side where you're all materiality, and so then you have no purpose and no meaning,
Yeah.
and so you're consumed in nihilism rather than um, ego inflation. But they sort of come to the same thing as you were pointing out.
Man, this has been proven to be a fantastic discussion, and I'm really enjoying going through this book.